Monsieur Saval, known to everyone in Mantes as Papa Saval, had only just risen from bed. Outside, a dreary autumn day stretched on, a fine rain was falling, and leaves were drifting down in slow descent. It was as though there were two rains at once, one fine and quick, alive, the other heavy, languid, made of leaves spiraling gently to the earth. A heaviness lay upon Monsieur Saval's heart. He paced the room, from the fireplace to the window and back again. Life has its overcast days, but for him now they would be unending. 62 years behind him, alone as a stone, an aging bachelor without a single soul to call his own. And how bitter it is to think that one will die thus in complete solitude, without a faithful and loving presence at one's deathbed. He turned over the record of his life in his mind, empty, colorless. Scenes came back to him, his childhood, his father's house, his parents, his schooling at the college, his first ventures into society, the years of studying law in Paris, and then illness, and his father's death. After the funeral he returned from Paris and settled with his mother. They lived quietly, peacefully, just the two of them, a young man and an old woman, and seemed to need nothing more. But soon his mother, too, was gone. Ah, how melancholy life can be! He was left alone. And now his own turn was drawing near. He would depart, and all would be over. There would be no more Monsieur Paul Saval. Yet life would go on, others would love, laugh, and take their pleasures. How could people be merry when over them all hung that inevitable end, as sure as the change of day to night? If only death left some room for doubt, then one might hope. But no. And yet, had his life been full, he might have gone more peacefully. Had he accomplished something, lived through vivid events, joys, triumphs, strong emotions. But no. Year after year, he had risen in the morning, eaten at the appointed hours, gone to bed again, and so to the age of 62. He had never even married. Why? Was it that he could not? He had the means. Perhaps the occasion never arose. But if one wishes, such occasions are always to be found. No, the truth was one thing alone, inaction. That vice had been his lifelong undoing. How many people lose happiness simply because they cannot rouse themselves to decide, to act? He had never known what it was to be loved. Never had he held a woman to his breast in the rapture of passion. He had not tasted the sweet torment of waiting, nor the tremor at the touch of a beloved hand, nor the bliss of desire fulfilled. What happiness there must be in a first kiss, in that close embrace that fuses two beings into one immeasurably happy creature. Saval, still in his dressing gown, sank into an armchair by the fire, stretching his legs toward the flames. Yes, his life had come to nothing. And yet he had loved secretly, painfully, and, as always, without taking action. It had been Madame Sandré, the wife of an old friend. Ah, had he met her before her marriage, he would certainly have proposed. But fate brought them together too late. Still, he had fallen for her at first sight, hopelessly. How his heart would leap at each meeting, how it ached when they parted. How many nights he lay sleepless, dreaming of her. In the mornings the feeling would fade a little. Why was that? Ah, what a vision she had been then, fair-haired, curly, full of laughter. Was Sandré really a match for her? Now she was 58, and seemed content. But if she had loved him back then, why should she not have returned his feeling, when he loved her so madly? Had she known anything of it? Had she guessed? What if he had confessed? How would she have taken it, what would she have said? And Saval kept asking himself question after question, trying to summon back every detail of those distant days. He recalled the long evenings spent at Sandré's house playing écarté, when his friend's wife was still young and so very charming. He remembered every word she had spoken, the inflections of her voice, even her silent smiles, so eloquent that they said more than any speech. The walks they had taken, the three of them, along the banks of the Seine came back to him, the Sunday breakfasts on the grass, when Sandre was free from his duties at the sub-prefecture. And one memory in particular blazed up vividly, an afternoon excursion he had taken with her alone to a little grove by the river. They had set out early in the morning, carrying bundles of provisions. It was a spring day, bright, intoxicating, full of gaiety. The air was rich with the scents of blossoms, and all around seemed steeped in happiness. Birds sang with especial cheer, darting from branch to branch. They breakfasted on the grass beneath the willows at the very edge of the river, which seemed to be dozing in the soft, warm light. The balmy air was heavy with the perfume of grasses and flowers. All three of them drank it in greedily, with delight. Ah, what a glorious day it had been! After breakfast, Sandre stretched out on his back and fell asleep. "I have never in my life slept so sweetly," he said on waking. Madame Sandre took Saval's arm, and the two of them set off along the riverbank. She leaned on his arm, laughing gaily. "I am quite drunk, my friend, absolutely drunk." He looked at her, and a sudden tremor seized him. He felt himself grow pale, afraid that his gaze might seem too bold, that the trembling of his hand might betray his secret. She wove a garland of field grasses and water lilies, set it on her curly head, and asked, "Do you like me like this?" He was silent, unable to find words, yet ready to fall to his knees before her. She laughed then, with a touch of irritation, and said reproachfully, "What a foolish man! You might at least have said something." He was on the verge of tears, unable to utter a syllable. He remembered how trustingly she had leaned on his arm. Passing beneath the drooping branches, they had both bent forward, and he had felt her delicate ear brush against his cheek. He had quickly drawn back, fearing she might think he had done it on purpose. And what a strange look she had given him when he said, "Perhaps it's time we turned back." Yes, she had looked at him in a particular way. At the time he had thought nothing of it, now it came back to him with perfect clarity. "As you wish, my dear friend. We'll go back, if you're tired," she had replied. "No, not tired exactly, only I thought Sandre might have woken by now." She shrugged her shoulders. "Of course, if you're afraid your husband will wake, that's another matter. Let's go back." On the way home she said nothing, and no longer leaned on his arm. Why? Never before had Saval asked himself that question. And now, all at once, it seemed to him he understood what he had never grasped before. Could it be? Saval felt himself blush, sprang to his feet in agitation, suddenly younger by 30 years. And then he seemed to hear Madame Sandre's voice saying, "I love you." No, surely not. Doubt crept in. Yet the thought tormented him, had he, back then, let happiness slip through his fingers without even knowing? And if it were true? If he had passed by his one great chance at joy? He told himself, "I must know. I cannot remain in ignorance. I must find out." Quickly, almost breathlessly, he dressed, thinking, "I am 62, she is 58. I can certainly ask her." And so he set off to see her. The Sandra's house stood on the same street, almost directly opposite his own. He mounted the steps and knocked. The door was opened by a young maid, startled by so early a visit. "So early, Monsieur Saval? Has something happened?" "No, my dear," Saval replied. "But please tell your mistress that I wish to see her at once. The mistress is busy, she's in the kitchen making pear preserves for the winter. And, you know, she's not dressed." "Very well. Tell her I must speak to her on a matter of great importance." The maid went off, and Serval, agitated, began pacing the drawing room in long strides. "It's nothing," he reassured himself. "I'll ask her simply, as one might ask for the recipe for some dish. After all, I'm 62. But then the door opened, and she came in. Before him now stood a rather stout woman, her cheeks full, her laughter ringing. She walked with elbows held wide, and her bare arms shone with sticky syrup. "What's the matter with you, my friend? Are you unwell?" she asked with concern. "No, my dear," he replied. "I only wanted to ask you a question, one that is very important to me. But promise you will answer truthfully." "I am always truthful," she smiled. "Ask." "Well, from the very first moment I saw you, I loved you. Did you ever guess that?" She laughed, and in her voice he heard those long-forgotten tones. "Oh, foolish man. I knew it from the very first day." Serval trembled. "You knew?" "But then," he stammered. His voice faltered. "Then?" "Well, what then?" she prompted. Then, how would you have taken it? What would you have said to me?" She laughed again, louder than before. Drops of syrup slid from her fingers and spattered on the floor. "Me? Why, you never asked me. I couldn't very well be the one to confess." He took a step toward her. Tell me, you haven't forgotten that day when Sandre fell asleep on the grass after breakfast, and we walked alone together, all the way to that bend in the river, do you remember?" He waited. She stopped laughing and looked him straight in the eyes. "Of course I remember that day." Still trembling, he went on. "Well then, what if that day I had been bolder, what would you have done?" She smiled carelessly, like a happy woman, and answered with a bright, almost teasing candor. "I would have yielded, my friend." Then, leaving him standing there, she ran back to her preserves. Serval stepped out into the street, crushed, as though some great misfortune had befallen him. With long strides, never looking back, he walked through the rain, unaware that he was heading toward the river. Reaching the Seine, he turned right and went along the bank. He walked for a long time, as if driven by some hidden force. He was soaked through. Water streamed from his hat, softened and crumpled like a rag, like rain off a roof. Still he went on, farther and farther, until at last he found himself at the very spot where, on that long-ago day, they had breakfasted together, the three of them, a memory now tearing at his heart. There he sank down on the grass beneath the arch of bare branches, and wept.